Good evening. The show we're going to do tonight is not easy. It's not ideal, but it still has to be done. In previewing the final weeks of the NFL season and CFP championship, we kind of learned this past week that what we're still watching is, just a game. As all of you know, after a hit on Monday Night Football on Bengals wide receiver T. Higgins, Bills star Damar Hamlin got up, and in one of the most horrific moments that I can remember watching sports in a long time, collapsed, and as we later learned, would suffer a cardiac attack. We can talk about the fallout from this, and as we come up close to the show tonight, we're going to talk about all of this stuff with the NFL, with all the media and stuff like that. But this was what I really think is important today is mortality. This was a little bit of the game of football being played and consequences, but this is more mortality. This is life or death. You never know when something life-threatening can happen. You never know how. You get scared of your own inner circle, which would be your family, your friends, or your own self. What started as a nonchalant player down on the field that could be so routine for the football viewer in the last 10 to 15 years back in the day, down on the field that you could basically hear the sad Fox music playing at 9 p.m. and just be like, okay, we'll be back after a moment. Turned out to be something more horrific by 9:25 when Damar was loaded into the ambulance after having 9 minutes of CPR done to him on the field. This is not a football thing now. It's a you thing. It's a personal thing. It's a mother thing. It's a father thing. It's a fan thing. This is a holy shit thing. This is a thing that no family should ever have to experience watching, which unfortunately the family did inside of the stadium. Now, I could wax poetic for the next minute and take up more of your time, but I won't. All I can say is this. Hug a family member, your mom, your dad, a friend, send one of those virtual hugs to someone else. Now, Damar's signs have been getting better. He's still in critical condition, according to reports today. But when you realize when you watch games this weekend, they're probably going to get played, but I'm just going to put the if in quotation marks, is that there's 22 players on the field, more on the sidelines, got coaches as well, that have mortality, the same that you have while watching. All right, welcoming in Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait to the first view on the Sports Lines of 2023. We're going to get into a lot of different things on the field tonight, but we're going to talk off the field right now. I'm not sure how to continue, Anthony. We can talk about the game itself, but I want to kind of talk about what was just going through everyone's head on Monday night. It's something that we've never really seen before in the modern era of the NFL. There was a player in 1971 who suffered a heart attack on the field. I don't remember one. I have to do the research on that, but that was a completely different story and non-football related. This was. And watching that, even if you didn't see it live and watched it on replay, or even if you just heard about it on replay, this makes you just think, doesn't
it? It does. I think the first thing that, I think I actually texted you because I had stepped away from my TV for a few minutes, and I went online and I saw people kind of posting about it, and the next post I see is from the Fox Sports page, and they're saying that CPR is being done on Damar Hamlin. So I reached out to you and asked, what happened, what's going on. And I turned to the game, and obviously, I think the first thing that caught my attention was the reactions of players, and that was on both teams, particularly the Buffalo Bills. I mean, this went from a game of significant importance because of the playoff picture and all that to someone could actually lose their life, and we're watching in real time something that I don't think any of us could have ever imagined can happen. And we've seen injuries, we've seen players get hurt. You wait for that thumbs up or some kind of gesture to let not just the viewers, but the players, the people in the crowd, to let everyone know everything's gonna be fine. And that wasn't the case. And I know for a lot of people who probably played the game, who probably been a long term fan, it hit if you had a health issue. I know I've had health issues in the past. It hit home because you you realize what Mike Golick said something years ago when he said every time you step on the field, you step away from it, you leave a piece of yourself. Because you don't realize the risk that these players are taking every time they take the field. And when we saw Monday night was a reminder that these are human beings. This is someone's son, someone's nephew, friend, uh, brother, teammate, and I can't say enough for the emergency workers there and what they were able to do, and possibly giving him a chance to fight for his life. Um, Not just on the field, but even getting him to the hospital. Right, and it's good to know that he's we've heard stories of improvement. Um, keep all obviously we're all keeping our prayers, our fingers crossed that he'll pull through. Um, but and I know there was some outrage about why the game wasn't stopped sooner, and hearing Troy Vincent and hearing some of the things that came out the last few days, and obviously some of the emotion from seeing it subsiding a little bit. Um, I don't know there is no finger pointing here. I think everyone did whatever they possibly could in a situation that I don't think anyone thought they would be witnessing. And um, the coaches, obviously Zach Taylor, Sean McDermott, the shit they showed, the communication with the officiating crew on the field and Virginia League office. Um, I I just you know I don't even know if there's any words to really fathom watching that live. Or just going through it.
There's not.
There was none. But the only thing I could say was, or the only thing I could say was, um, the EMT workers. I don't know how much of a thank you anybody given them, but you emergency workers right now reminding everyone not only that they're so good at their job, but the job they do is definitely not for the faint of heart. Um, I,
Yeah.
I my prayers go out to his family, his mom in particular. Um, you you really just, you know, keep him in your prayers, and hopefully he'll be able to pull through.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to say also is the commending of both teams just dealing with the situation. And you can say what you want about what the NFL did. It's an unprecedented situation. It's a hard situation to deal with. It's a situation that I know I got a little shit from a friend who I said the NFL was in a situation that I don't envy. I don't envy anybody involved with it. And that's one of but what was just band of brothers on the team. The players shielding, making sure that Damar Hamlin would be able to go through everything without a camera on them. Even if there was an ESPN camera on them, they never shot back to them. We'll talk again more about the media fallout of all of this stuff and the NFL version fallout of all of this stuff. But again, Jay, we haven't seen really almost anything like what we saw on Monday, and it really just made us again think.
Yeah, I mean, I texted this to both of you guys, while I was watching the scene unfold. The NFL, and what I said to you guys was the NFL, at least, in my lifetime, hasn't seen a serious on-field injury, even remotely like this, since Raiders strong safety Jack Tatum hit Patriots wide receiver Darryl Stingley in a preseason game back in August of 1978. The hit crushed and dislocated 2 vertebrae in Stingley's neck, severely damaging his spinal cord and ultimately paralyzing him. It made him a quadriplegic, and he would spend the rest of his years in a wheelchair. Unlike on Monday night, though, the game actually resumed after Stingley was carted off the field. To say it was a different time in both the NFL and society would be a colossal understatement. But that's the first thing that kind of came to mind for me as I was watching things unfold. And I agree with you guys. There's no doubt that the game should have been suspended until further notice. One look at any of the Bills players, and you could tell there was no way they could even contemplate, returning to play. Anthony and I have both played the game, and we've both taken hard hits. But, when you have to administer CPR for 8 minutes to a player lying unconscious on the field before an ambulance can take him to a level 1 trauma center, that's a whole different thing. The game no longer matters in any shape, manner, or form. All that matters is the condition of that young man. And everybody associated with ESPN's broadcast, from Joe Buck and Troy Aikman in the booth and Lisa Salter on the sidelines, to Susie Colbert, Adam Schefter, and Booger McFarland in the studio, to Scott Van Pelt and Ryan Clark during Sports Center. They handled the situation with such humanity and such thoughtfulness under very trying circumstances. I mean, if you didn't hear Clark on SVP, find the link on Twitter somewhere. Plenty of people were sharing it. Of all those who spoke on the matter, none were as impactful as Clark, in my opinion, who was a 13-year NFL veteran who played the same position as Hamlin. And here's the quote: "I think football brings out the humanity in some of us some of the time, not all of the time, because we're asked to be barbaric. We're asked to have a certain level of machismo. We're asked to watch people lay on the ground that may not be able to get up themselves and step over them and be able to play the next snap. That's where we get to where we are. And for the first time, I think both teams and all of the people in the stands had to finally say, you know what? That little ball made of pigskin is the least important thing in the world to all of us right now." I don't think anyone could have articulated it better. As several tweets said last night, as all three of us posted on our social media platforms, we're all Bills fans right now as we pray for a 24-year-old kid to recover from something he probably never thought he'd have to deal with, so he can just simply return to life, which right now is all that matters.
Yeah, the what I was talking about before, this is probably a more comparable thing to what we saw on Monday or not, is Chuck Hughes, a 28-year-old wide receiver for the Lions in October of 1971, had a heart attack on the field.
Yes.
This was not game related. It was a medical condition that he had that no one actually found evidence of. It played the final 62 seconds of the game that day, by the way, even though there was a little time left. So, but again, I want to get to the media portion of this in a little while, but the show, not unfortunately, but we will go on with sports, because that's what we do, and that's what we do semi-decently, 5 out of 10. So let's move on to college football, where this upcoming Monday in Los Angeles, by the way, it's the oddest a combo of place and sport. There's very strict tailgating rules there. You can't really do a lot. And so why Los Angeles? You don't, I love your college football atmosphere, but Coliseum or bust, in my view. And I know Jay would agree with that. Okay. The college football playoff will have its final act for the season. So we have the team that's expected to be here, except if you were me on the preseason show. Number 1 seed and defending national champion, the Georgia Bulldogs, going on against the number 3 seed. The not expected to be here in any way, shape, or form, TCU. All hail the Hypnotoad. the first ever Big 12 representation in the finals. No, there, by the way, in the 9-year CFP history. I can't believe I just said the words 9-year CFP history. I feel like the bowl system of the old days is a thing of the past. All right. Georgia is almost a 2-touchdown favorite. It opened up at 13. Don't know where it is right now. I'll have to take a look. All right. Jay, let's talk about that 2-touchdown favorite. How did the Bulldogs seal the deal and become the first repeat champ of this 9-year era?
I don't know. You'll have
Actually-
to ask Anthony since he has the dogs tonight.
Okay, well, if that's the case, Anthony, what do you think? I'm sorry. I don't know why I said that, Jay.
No, it's perfectly fine. You know what? So much has happened since New Year's Eve that we're all kind of we've been in a cloud.
And that was just a complete
the last
fuck
couple
up
of
on my
days.
part, but that's all right.
Well, anyway, the Bulldogs they gotta get their defense back, and we established how good the defense was during the regular season. Look at their rankings; they were 5th in the nation in opponents' points per game, 10th in opponents' yards per game, and just in the last 2 games, they're talking about the SEC championship game against LSU and obviously against Ohio State in the Peach Bowl. They allowed 502 yards passing in the SEC championship game, 348 yards to CJ Stroud, who literally picked them apart for four quarters. And oh, by the way, they have a hard time. That secondary have a hard time covering elite wideouts because before he got hurt, Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like he was gonna put on a show. Against that secondary. He had 2 touchdowns, obviously, before the injury. And now you have Quentin Johnson from TCU coming in, and he's a guy who only has 6 pass catches for 163 and a touchdown against Michigan Wolverines. And the Fiesta Bowl, 65 catches, 1,100 yards, 7 touchdowns for the season. And also on top of that, the Bulldogs linebacker core is a little banged up. Obviously, Cash Chambliss suffered a serious knee injury. Nolan Smith was out. Michael Williams obviously had to play linebacker, but he's really a defensive end. So a lot of shuffling in the first 7 and a secondary that has been very leaky and giving up a lot of big plays. Georgia's got to figure out a way to slow down TCU's offense. I mean, obviously, Michigan was top 5 defense as well, and just had no answer whatsoever on the ground or in the air when Matt Sturgeon had the opportunity to get the ball out and to get plays downfield. So the Bulldogs, a team that they got to figure out a way to get pressure on the quarterback, maybe make Duggan get the ball a lot quicker, try to force some takeaways. Obviously, Georgia has not. The turnovers has been wearing down the last couple of games. And Georgia really they don't want to get into a shootout. I think that's what we saw. I don't know how many miracles Stinson Bennett's gonna have at this point, but I don't think they can rely on Bennett and being a comeback kid 2 games in a row. That defense is gonna have to step it up and make some plays.
I'm sorry, what? First of all, I have a couple of issues with what you said. Number one, we're not talking about a schmo passing on this offense. We're talking about probably the best talent, the second most talented quarterback in the nation. Go Green Wave, by the way.
I'm not bashing Matt Sturgeon,
We're talking about the second most talented team in the nation. And I don't think it's easy to be a team that wins your games 24-21 anymore. And Georgia, Stinson Bennett has done this enough times now. If you watch the 4th quarter of the national championship game last year, and you see the confidence of a man who was redshirting to JT Daniel, who was basically going to be behind JT Daniels, who is possibly on his 7th college football team now. I think, I'm not 100% sure. And he's become a guy who can actually end up being a serviceable backup. I think Georgia
I
has
say that
boosted that guy up. I'm just telling you. That's what I'm thinking, honestly.
I say that with all due respect to TCU. There was no knock on them, but when you're the Georgia Bulldogs, you had the fifth best defense all season, and you're giving up plays in chunks. Something's got to be done.
True.
You gotta figure out a way to slow down TCU's offense.
Yeah, but going from Ohio State to TCU is like going from the filet mignon to a nice little porterhouse. You enjoy it, but you could do better than that. Speaking
Hey,
of,
nothing wrong with that kid you Outback Steakhouse. What's wrong with you?
that is true. That is true. Speaking of, Jay, we don't like to open up loose wounds. Again, go Green Wave. But I want to get you to TCU. So TCU, only the fifth unranked team in preseason poll history since the BCS era to make a title game for college football since '98. So how does TCU seal the deal in LA?
I mean, it comes down to this for me. I mean, Max Duggan in the passing game has to be better. I mean, yes, TCU's ground game did its job against Michigan's top 5 rushing defense, which hadn't allowed more than 148 yards to any team this year, to the tune of 263 yards on 41 carries. That's 6.4 per carry, and 3 touchdowns, despite losing RB1 Kendry Miller, their leading rusher, with 1,399 yards and 6.3 yards per carry. 17 touchdowns for practically the entire second half to a knee injury. His understudy, Amari DeMarcado, had 150 of those 263 rushing yards, averaged 8.8 a carry in one of those touchdowns. So even if Miller is not available for the title game and he's listed as questionable as of right now, the run game is in pretty good hands. The passing game, however, can't repeat its performance, and that starts with the Heisman runner-up in Duggan. The Horned Frogs quarterback had his worst passing performance of the season. He was 14 of 29. That's 48.2% for 225 yards. 7.8 per attempt, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. It was the first time this season that he has completed less than 50% of his passes, and 2, had a multi-interception game. He did make some plays with his feet. He had 15 carries for 57 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, but he does that every week. He was TCU's 3rd leading rusher with 461 yards and was 2nd in rushing TDs with 8. But if he can't make plays with his arm, then he's no longer the dual threat engine that drives a TCU offense that was number 5 in the nation in scoring at 41.1 points per game. And that will render the Horned Frogs to a one-dimensional offense. There's no way they can beat Georgia if that happens. Granted, both of Duggan's interceptions fall into the category of fluky, as TCU offensive coordinator Garrett Riley termed them. Wide receiver Darius Davis bobbled a pass that resulted in the first interception, and Michigan linebacker Junior Colson deflected a pass intended for wide receiver Tay Barber for the second pick. But, that can't happen against the Dogs. The other thing that stood out for me was that aside from 3 chunk plays to wide receiver Quentin Johnston, a 32-yarder, a 46-yarder, and a 76-yard touchdown, the passing attack was pretty pedestrian. 71 yards, 2.7 yards per attempt, one other pass play for more than 20 yards. That type of passing attack will not cut it. Is it possible that TCU could hit on a few big pass plays like that against Georgia? Sure. After all, as Anthony noted, they allowed CJ Stroud to shred them to the tune of 348 yards. That's 10.2 yards per pass and 4 touchdowns with 6 plays of 20 yards or more. But if Georgia rolls their coverage to shut down Johnston and prevent him from putting up another 6-catch, 163-yard day, then Duggan will have to get the ball to Davis and Barber, and they'll have to make plays. Anthony talked about a shootout, and he's right. A shootout favors TCU, but that means that Riley will have to scheme up a more diverse passing attack, and Duggan will have to execute it. Doesn't have to be to the tune of the 23 of 29 at 79% completion percentage, 390-yard, 5-touchdown game he put up against Tarleton State, but something close to his average against Big 12 teams, which is about 19 for 30, 31, which 62.5% completion, little over 262.5 yards per game, 8.6 yards per attempt, 2 scores, and practically no interceptions. Those type of numbers, that may suffice.
Also, you failed to mention that 67-yarder was essentially Quentin Johnson making one juke and going down the sideline. So that's has nothing to do with arm strength of Max Duggan at all. So I'm very curious to see if And there was a lot of bad throws by Max Duggan. A lot of bad throws,
Yeah,
more than I think we've seen in
uncharacteristic
any game.
bad
Very
throw.
uncharacteristic, and I think he just played to a game where TCU was handed a lot of stuff by Michigan. I don't want to say Michigan lost that game for them, but Michigan had a lot of openings and they shut their own door at a lot of times during that game. So one thing I'm looking for in this national championship game is you don't really tell a game before in the first drive or two, but I want to see what happens. What happens in the first drive or two is going to really tell this game, because Michigan moved the ball really well in the first drive of that Fiesta Bowl and got stuck inside of the 10.
Then
And
decided
that
to
really-
get stupid.
Yeah, decided to get stupid, called bad plays, and I think that really set the tone for the entire game. I think what I've seen in Georgia over the last 2 years is they don't have the types of games that they had last year against Alabama. They don't have the types of games that they had against Ohio State. What they do is what they did against Tennessee in the regular season, and to a lesser extent what they did against LSU in the SEC championship game in the first half. They take the foot and they stomp on your neck immediately. And I think the way that Georgia is going to be comfortable in playing this game is to stomp them on the neck. I can't say that Georgia can't win a close game, but you can tell through the first 2 or so drives that if TCU isn't feeling it, you might as well be in, just pack it in and try to find out what's going on WWE Raw, because this game is going to be over in a very, very quick second. And that's what I'm here to see. That'll tell if this game is going to come down to the final seconds, or if this game is going to be over by 8:30, and it's a 7:30 kickoff. So don't tell me that it doesn't begin at 8. All right. On from the amateurs that get paid to the pros that get paid more than said amateurs. The New York Giants, for the first time since 2016, will be playing till at least the second week of January. Let's go! The 6th-seeded Giants will learn their opponent this Sunday, and I can say that for a fact. And it can be the Vikings, the Niners, the Cowboys, or it could be the opponent that they actually have this Sunday in the all of a sudden sliding Philadelphia Eagles. Talk about the Eagles in a moment, but let's take a look back at the whooping given to the Indianapolis Colts this past Sunday, 38-10. And if you want a preview of the Eagles game, no one knows what the Giants are going to do in this situation. I'm shocked they got put in a prime time 425 spot for this game. So we're going to try to hold the speculation on what the Giants will do in week 18 to a minimum, because we think that they'll probably do a little bit of resting since they can't move out of the 6th spot that they currently hold. All right, Jay, let's talk about that boy, Daniel Jones. He has come a long way this season. Last 3 games have been outstanding, but the playoff clincher was the masterpiece of the season.
Yeah, Rabbi, I said to you when we chatted on Monday that I think Daniel Jones has earned his second contract with the Giants with his performance over the last 2 weeks. Against the Vikings, he showed that he could execute a pass-heavy offense. He went 30 of 42, that's 71.4%. For 334 yards, a tick under 8 yards per attempt, 1 TD, 1 pick, and a 92.8 passer rating. Against the Colts, he showed his mastery of the Giants' preferred offensive scheme, heavy on the run game with their running backs, designed and improvised quarterback runs with Jones, and quick passes that get the ball out of the quarterback's hands and into those of the playmakers so they can create yards after the catch, paired with the occasional deep shot downfield when the opportunity presents itself. Jones was 19 of 24, that's 79.2% completion, 177 yards, 7.4 per attempt, 2 scores, no picks, a 125.2 passer rating through the air, 11 carries for 91 yards, that's 8.3 per carry, and 2 scores on the ground to lead a Giants rushing attack that put up 217 yards and a tick under 6 yards a carry. Saquon Barkley had only 12 carries for 58 yards, but he split the load with Matt Breida, who had 9 carries for 58. That's a combined game of 117 yards on 21 carries, 5.6 a pop. And the Giants will take that from the running back room every week. Jones's consistency over the last few games, putting together long drives, making the right decisions with the ball, when to run, when to throw, and looking increasingly comfortable with the offense has been huge. On Sunday, he once again looked at ease, using his legs to make plays out of the pockets while also showing enough composure to make the throws that needed to be made, even under pressure. Offensive coordinator Mike Kafka said this week, and here's the quote: "I think he's trusting himself with those reads. He's doing a good job stepping up in the pocket when there's lanes, stepping up and running. Those are things that I think make, from the quarterback position, make it difficult for defenses to defend when you have a quarterback that's mobile, that can step up and do those things. He's done a great job of making those right decisions when they get the ball out, when to step up." The big thing that we hammered Daniel Jones for the first 3 years of his career was the turnovers. 12-25 record, but 50 total touchdowns against 49 turnovers. So coming into this season, doubts about his future as the heir apparent to Eli Manning were warranted. He's converted those doubts, in my opinion, by leading the Giants to this season's 9-6-1 record. He has 22 total touchdowns against just 8 total turnovers. That dual threat ability, paired with his massive improvement in both ball security and decision-making this season, gives the Giants a pretty big weapon at the quarterback spot going into the postseason. NFL Network reported Sunday morning the Giants do want to re-sign Jones. Owner John Mara's comment to reporters after Sunday's game that Jones's development has been, quote, gratifying, is kind of adding to the belief that Jones will be in a Giant uniform next season. Look, he's gone from getting booed by Giants fans at a draft party at MetLife Stadium when his selection was announced to getting a standing ovation and having his name chanted by the G-Men faithful as he exited that 38-10 playoff clinching win over the Colts. You guys know I've been a believer in Daniel Jones since he was drafted. At least for me, it's nice to see him become exactly who the Giants hoped he'd be, which is the right quarterback to lead this team and this offense into the playoffs.
And you really wonder what's going to continue. First of all, it's going to be great for him to have even a game of playoff experience under the belt, because nothing was expected of this team this year. And with the wide receivers in the room that they had, nothing was expected of this team this year. Nope. And they've taken huge advantage of it. I'm very curious to see if they sign Daniel Jones. I think they will, how long they want to sign him for. And that is another story for another day. Mm-hmm. Anthony, outside of Snow Angels and Kayvon Thibodeau and him saying today, who the hell is Jeff Saturday? And honestly, I think a lot of people who are 22 years old who don't watch ESPN would probably think the same thing. The defense was very on point on Sunday.
Yeah, one of my concerns coming into the game was which Indianapolis Colts team was going to show up. The team that looked.
Is there a good Indianapolis Colts team? Because I haven't seen them in about 5 weeks.
Yeah, but one of the things that concerned me was it going to be the Colts team we've seen the last few weeks has been downright dreadful, or a team that had a 33-point lead at one point in Minneapolis last month. But the Giants defense, number one, they're getting healthier again. Xavier McKinney was back in the lineup.
It was big.
Gave up a 49-yard completion. He's playing with the club on his hand still. Obviously, that hand is not exactly 100%, but played quite a number of snaps. His influence in that defensive backfield is definitely key. The secondary has struggled quite a bit, obviously, and that kind of forced Wink Martin to call more blitzes to try to protect that back end. But we saw last Sunday what the Giants can do when they could just rush 4 guys and basically still get pressure on the quarterback. You mentioned Kayvon Thibodeau got a big sack, knocked Nick Foles out the game. Probably the only thing that went wrong for the Giants was his ill-advised celebration next to an injured quarterback. But outside of that, the Giants held the Colts to just 3 of 12 on third downs, 252 total yards of offense. Landon Collins, welcome back to New York. 52-yard pick six that brought back shades of. By the way, he is the only Giant on that team who was on the last playoff team.
Was he on the boats? I'm trying to remember. Was he on the boats?
No, he was not on the boat, but you know what? He was a Pro Bowler that year. They helped the Giants get to the playoffs that season. 52-yard pick six in the second quarter that really set the table for a dominant afternoon. Dexter Lawrence has just been unbelievable for the Giants and that front four. He got a sack also. Jalen Smith, one of the stranger plays, had a sack and let the quarterback go out of field that he was gonna a roughing the passer penalty. It reminded me of the Dias Kiwanuka doing that on Vince Young once upon a time years ago on a would-be sack, and he let him go.
He got killed for that, by the way, and multiple people did that last Sunday because of the roughing the passer rules this season. Obviously, it was before Monday night.
But I mean, you just can't say enough. Besides that, I mean, he played well. Darnay Holmes is shown to be a very quality corner, obviously. Filling in for a still injured Adoree Jackson. The Giants defense really they were physical. They didn't mess around. They don't give up the one big play. Other than that, one of the key moments was at the beginning of the second half. Darius Slayton fumbled the football and the Colts were covered. The Colts had a chance to kind of get the quarterback back in the game. The Giants defense stepped up, was able to force a field goal attempt that the Colts missed. I thought that was definitely the key moment in that game that kept the Colts from getting back into it and really allow the Giants to kind of cruise to what turned out to be a real easy win. I mean, this is a Giant team that, besides Minnesota, have played the most heart-pounding games this season. So to see them be able to clinch a playoff berth at home in a convincing fashion, I think that had to be a bit of a sigh of relief to every Giant fan that's had to go through the ups and downs and the angst of this season. And by the way, I can't say enough about Daniel Jones and the standing ovation he received, because someone, Phil Sims, had a shed and tell, because he kind of went through the same thing, getting booed on draft day and eventually had to win the fans over. But the Giants defense, they show when they're healthy, especially when you think of Ojulari and Thibodeau being able to rush the quarterback and not having to blitz so much, how this team could, because their defense would have a fighting chance against a Minnesota team they just saw a few weeks ago, or a 49er team that, you know what, they're very good offensively, have a lot of weapons, but they also have an inexperienced quarterback who might be, that would be seeing his first playoff action in his career. So, I mean, the Giants would be huge underdogs in both situations, but their defense do give them a chance to at least hang around, which the Giants probably do better than a lot of teams outside of the Vikings this season.
By the way, I was wrong before. The only if they kind of put it in there, the only two teams that they can play in round one right now are the 49ers and the Vikings.
Yeah, and it's
more.
By the way,
going to be the Vikings.
Well, of course, it's going to most likely be the Vikings.
And by the way, they can play both teams in either order if the Giants beat one and advance to round two, because obviously.
Well, remember they reseed. So remember they reseed. Yes, they reseed. Okay. So that's probably not going to happen. So
okay,
probably would have to go
the Giants probably go to the 1 seed because of the 6.
Yeah,
unless
they would probably go to the 1 seed.
Yeah.
Well, major upside could possibly happen. We'll talk about that in just a second. By the way, the Vikings is the preferred opponent, and if the Vikings lose to the Bears, who are starting Nathan Peterman on Sunday, I'm not kidding. They can get that immediately. The 49ers beat the Cardinals. Yeah, they are. Or if the 49ers beat the Cardinals and the Cardinals are starting David Blau this Sunday, I'm not kidding. They could take that spot. So the Eagles here, by the way, on Sunday, let me talk about the Eagles real quick. They're in a must-win situation against a team who we thought was going to be in a must-win situation against a resting Eagles team not too long ago, because the Giants were a little bit of a stride after that tie against Washington. But the Eagles have a possibility of falling to the 5. The Cowboys play the football team at the same play the Commanders, at the same time on Sunday. And if the Cowboys win and the Eagles lose, the Eagles have to go to Tampa. They don't even probably get a home game and have to start the playoffs on the road against the team that they lost to last year, albeit a different team. But The Eagles are a 14-point favorite for a reason here. They're going to probably have Jalen Hurts back. In the game that they played on Christmas Eve against the Cowboys, they looked very sharp. It was just really a last team with the ball situation. The Eagles secondary was a little bit suspect, but the Cowboys had a very good game plan, and the Eagles forgot that T.Y. Hilton played for the Cowboys because they converted a 4th-and-30 on them over to T.Y. Hilton for his first catch as a Cowboy. But in the game against the Saints on Sunday, Gardner Minshew showed exactly why Minshew Mania is always going to be riding the bench on a lot of decisions. He made poor decisions. He was not accurate in the pocket at all, and he really did not have time, and showed that if you don't have your A game, you need your B- game to win the NFL. And he doesn't have a B- game. It's either A or F. And unfortunately for the Eagles, it was an F. Their offensive line was terrible, couldn't get the ball rolling, and the Saints came out, scored immediately on them, and kind of set the tone. So this is the Eagles' third and final strike to get that number 1 seed that they've been kind of coveting for most of the season. They played like the best team in the NFL for most of the season. And this is going to be the time they can hope for their sake, hopefully finish the job. What will the Giants do on Sunday? I have no idea. This is not in the nature of Brian Daboll to have a full rest week, but 4:00 game on a Sunday, that's a little dangerous considering you can have people injured. And God forbid Daniel Jones does not know how to do anything but dive for a first down, even when he doesn't need to dive for a first down and steps out 10 yards before he dives for a first down. So we're going to see what happens on Sunday. A different situation for the Giants, because I think in the red zone era, I've never actually seen the Giants in a situation where they're actually good to watch. And it's going to be a little bit different for the Giants this Sunday, but Eagles have a lot to play for.
Yeah, and honestly, Rabbi, if I'm the Giants, I think you treat this as sort of an exhibition game where your ones play maybe one series, two series.
Maybe.
I don't even think they play the entirety of the first quarter, but if so, I don't see it going past that. And then you bring your 2s and your 3s in for the rest of the game.
I will say this though. 2 years ago, the Giants had to depend on the Eagles to beat Washington to make the playoffs, and the Eagles rested people pretty early. So I don't think that's in the back of their mind, but I'm just letting you know. I'm just letting you know that that's a possibility of something happening. So just keep it. Don't think about it. Lock it away. Throw it in the back of your head, Anthony.
If that was Joe Judge, maybe it would be the back of my mind, but different regime, different.
It is a different regime, though. But again, just think about it and just throw it in the back of your head. All right. Well, we got good closure to the Giants playoff chase by 3 p.m. this past Sunday, probably 2. At 7 p.m., we also got closure to the Jets playoff chase. And you know how that chase ends. The same way Wile E. Coyote deals with the Roadrunner, goes off a cliff. The Jets' 5th straight loss was their last game with playoff aspirations in the 2022 season. A 23-6, it's about as bad as it looks, loss to the Seahawks. The Jets can only play spoiler now as they hang their heads to Miami to play another team with a 5-game losing streak. That would be the Dolphins, who might be starting a guy named Skylar Thompson, and who, I'm not kidding, just signed Mike Glennon to their squad. Yes, the infamous quarterback sneak on 3rd and 9, Mike Glennon. Don't tell me there's not a problem with quarterbacks and injuries in the NFL. All right, Jay, what stood out for you most, good or bad, with the offense in the Week 17 loss to the Seahawks? There's a lot. Just give me some Mike White.
Yeah, Mike White was definitely out of sync, and it definitely shows. And look, I'm not going to lay all of the blame for his performance in the 23-6 loss to the Seahawks on him not being 100% healthy, but I definitely feel it was a contributing factor. Had his worst performance of the season, just 23 of 46. That's an even 50%, 240 yards, average just over 5.2 an attempt, no TDs, 2 picks, a season worst 47.4 passer rating. He's also sacked a season high 4 times, and he lost a fumble. It was the first time in 4 starts that White just could not move the Jets offense in any significant way. They never made it into the red zone and managed just a pair of 44-yard field goals by Greg Zuerlein. I've said this multiple times on the show talking about White. He is a tier 3 quarterback. And I'm going to remind everybody what that is. It's a quarterback who is a legitimate starter, but he needs a heavier running game and or defensive component to win. A lower volume drop back passing offense suits him best. And that last part is key because it means that if he has to throw the ball 30 plus times, his limitations as a passer are more likely to be exposed, which will likely lead to bad throws, turnovers, and that's likely going to lead to defeat. I went back and I looked at, the rush yards to pass attempts in White's starts. The 31-10 win over Chicago is exactly how you'd like to see the Jets offense work. 158 yards rushing on 32 carries, 4.9 a carry. And the Jets, that amount of yards and carries and averages the Jets put up with both Zonovan Knight and Ty Johnson topping 60 yards allowed the Jets to win time of possession. It means that White had less than 30 passing attempts. He was 22 of 28, 78.6%, 315 yards, 11.25 per attempt, 3 scores, 0 picks, 149.3 passer rating. You look at the 20-12 loss to Buffalo was how you don't want the Jets offense to run. Ground game only produced 76 yards on 22 carries, 3.5 a pop. And with the Jets trailing early and often, they had to abandon the run in their attempt to come back, which had White putting the ball up 44 times to no avail, as no passing touchdowns were produced. The 27-22 loss to the Vikings, Jets ground game was decent, 124 yards on 24 carries, 5.2 a pop, including 90 yards on 15 carries and a breakout game for Knight at 6 yards a carry. But once again, the Jets trailed early and often, so they once again had to resort to White throwing the ball 57 times this time. And again, no avail, no passing TDs produced. This time, however, he threw 2 picks, including 1 in the red zone with 16 seconds left to kill the comeback. Against the Seahawks, White threw a pick on the Jets' first drive, forcing a pass deep for Denzel Mims into double coverage that was easily picked off by Seattle. Threw his second pick in the third quarter on a pass that was behind Garrett Wilson, with the Jets already trailing 20-3 at that point. White wasn't good, but the offensive line hasn't provided much help lately, and this game was no exception. And that's kind of partly why White was sacked 4 times. It's partly why the Jets' run game netted just 75 yards on 17 carries. 4.4 yards per carry is nice, but overall, it's not enough production. Add to that multiple wide receivers and tight ends dropping catchable passes on Sunday, and you have the Jets failing again to finish drives with anything other than field goals. Look, since the start of December, the Jets have scored 4 touchdowns on offense in the last 20 quarters and 1 touchdown in the last 23 drives with White at quarterback. After Sunday's loss, Jets have gone 8 straight quarters without a touchdown. Now, White wouldn't blame his poor production on his obviously not fully healed ribs, but the Jets need better play from the quarterback position. But that play will come from someone not currently on the roster. Look, I think White deserves to be a Jet next season if the Jets want him back, but it needs to be as the backup to a solid veteran NFL starter who has at least a tier 2 skill set, which means he has the ability to carry his team sometimes, handle pure passing situations in doses, and or possesses other dimensions that are special enough to elevate him above tier 3, and thus can give Gangrene more than what they've gotten from Mike effing White.
Tier 2 quarterbacks are almost not even existing a lot in the NFL this year, especially in the backup room, and that's the next question that's going to happen. And obviously the first name, and again, we have something to talk about it. Keep it in the back of your mind. Derek Carr. So that'll be an interesting.
And Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo's on
too. Garoppolo's on that list too, but one of them has less of an injury history than the other to make sure that Mike effing White doesn't have to play 9 to 10 games. Okay.
And the thing that,
Yeah.
puts Garoppolo in the conversation,
Yeah.
is, he's played in a Shanahan style offense, which is what.
And he's definitely a tier 2 type of
and
guy.
but you're coming from a Shanahan playbook to a similar playbook in what LaFleur runs in offense. If LaFleur is still there, some people in the media, and on, social media have been trying to turn up the heat under LaFleur's seat. I don't know if it's completely
We've talked about it before. You can't just lay the blame fully on that quarterback position without putting another name to it. You can't.
There's plenty of blame. There's plenty of blame to go around.
Again,
to see how much of it blows back on the offensive coordinator.
And we'll talk about that next week, or we'll talk about that our next show. All right, Anthony. One thing that's been underrated in my book on this Jets failure is body language, coaching, and really a sense of bad motivation over this last few games of the season. And the defense just hasn't understood the assignment, especially over these last 8 quarters, this game included.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about the Jets being at 1.7-4, the defense was such a catalyst to that. I mean, think about the job they did on Aaron Rodgers and Josh Allen early in the season. And the last 2 games, that has been really completely absent. Like like the defense literally from the first play give up a 60-yard run to Kenneth Walker. That pretty much became the catalyst for what we were going to see the entire afternoon. I mean, the Jets defense, they just got bullied. I just no way else to explain it. They were bullied. They didn't control the line of scrimmage whatsoever. Walker finished with 133 yards, 23 carries, and that 60-yard run. Geno Smith, he didn't do a whole lot. He did enough. And they obviously, in the way the Jets offense has been operating, doing enough almost guarantees a victory these days. They held him to 18-29, 183, 2 touchdowns. He had 103 QB rating, meaning that he was able to complete a lot of easy underneath passes, didn't turn the ball over, but obviously I'll talk about Seattle in our next segment, which had been a problem with Geno Smith. But the Jets were down 17-3 before the defense finally woke up. And that was kind of the problem in this downward spiral. We saw it in Minnesota, the Jets defense getting onto a really slow start. And they fall behind by double digits and finally decides to start picking it up and playing a lot better in the second half. One of the plays that was maddening was on an improv pitch from Geno Smith to DJ Dallas that went for a 41-yard run, and both touchdown passes Geno Smith threw were wide open receivers. There was literally no jet in sight on either of those touchdown passes. The bright spot has been Sauce Gardner. I mean, he leads the NFL in pass defender with 18, but that's a minor consolation considering this Jet defense that have been so good all season, going from the bottom of the league to top 10, and really the catalyst and mostly won games for the team. Kind of melted down when the defense needed to step up the most against a Seattle team that had been struggling, that had been turning the ball over quite a bit, and the Jets were just simply they just looked like they just didn't have any motivation. They just like the body language was not there, and the season was on the line. The Jets, every day broke well for the Jets the last couple of weeks. Well, they just had to win their last 2 games to get into the playoffs, and with that, literally like the carrot in front of them, they weren't able to take advantage of it, and it's a disappointing end to a season where the Jets on that side of football has made so many strides forward, and Robert Saleh obviously being a defensive-minded coach with that reputation, you finally saw how good the Jets defense could be. But when it mattered most, they just fell short, and I think that was probably one of the more disappointing things, especially the last 2 weeks. We saw it with Jacksonville, and the Jaguars were able to kind of go up and down the field, seemingly at will at certain points. And with Seattle, they just gave up a couple of big plays and waited too late to kick in a high gear. And before you know it, was too little too late.
Honestly, guys, it all comes down to coaching for me in that situation. Just they were not ready to get the players on the field. And if you looked at that Jets-Jaguars game, the only thing that kept that score down was the weather, because it looked like the Jaguars, who are fundamentally one of the better teams in the NFL right now, could do whatever they wanted to the New York Jets that night. They just chose not to because they knew Zach Wilson was on the other side of quarterback, and kind of, you know how teams dumb down their offense to a certain person. The Jaguars dumbed down their offense because they knew the number that they hit was basically 6 to 9 points. So yeah, this is we'll again get to a lot of this Jet stuff next week, because we will have a post-mortem on what was a lost season. I don't necessarily know if it's a failure of the season, because this is a team that had a tough schedule, and 7 or 8 wins on Sunday is an improvement, but this is a little bit of a failure, at least the way it ended. So now you're going to get exactly what you came here for. Talk about Raheem Mostert. What? Yeah, talk about Raheem Mostert of the Dolphins. Why? The Dolphins have been a very sexy team all year with the Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle combination. However, that Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle combination will obviously take a little bit of a hit with Teddy Bridgewater as a quarterback. And after Teddy Bridgewater threw a pick-6 on this past Sunday against the Patriots, broke his hand. So there's a very likely possibility, and with the Mike Glennon signing this week, I can't said his name again. There's a possibility that Skylar Thompson, who if you're on the tier 1 or 2 or 3 level, that's a tier 4 right there, because he was a round 7 pick this past year, and he just does not look ready to play at all. So if that's the case, you're going to have to go with the guy who led you in receiving last week. That's Raheem Mostert. He had 8 catches out of the backfield because he does have the talent. He went for 900 yards this year, and he is a dual threat type of guy. I don't know if a Skylar Thompson or, again, a Mike Glennon is going to take the top off of this offense, even with 2 of the biggest toys in the NFL in Hill and Waddle. So you're going to have to control the ball. You're going to have to make sure you get those yards in very, very quick, in very, very small chunks, because this is a team that does not go 5, that has the most touchdown drives under 5 minutes in the NFL this season, which is fair, because again, you have guys who are big play guys on your team. You are the flashy team. However, with the Tua Tagovailoa concussion in week 16, and he's not in the plans for this week at all, according to Coach Mike McDaniel, the Dolphins are just going to have to win another way. This game could get very ugly very quickly. I'm not sure if the Dolphins are even anywhere close to a playoff team right now. And honestly, flip a coin on this one, because both of these teams are equally in the tank. All right. We're going to finish off the night, whether it be for a playoff spot and access to the 14-team playoffs. I can't wait till they go to 16. It's going to happen. You wait. And you possibly could get a division or first round home game, a high seeded 2 home games, or a 1 seed and 2 home games and a bye. You could play for a lot of things in week 18. Still so weird to say. And the 3 of us will talk about what we are looking for in the NFL season finale. Please note, because of the uncertainty of what we might see with Buffalo and Cincinnati this week, we're going to take New England Buffalo off of the table. We're going to take Baltimore and Cincinnati off of the table. We don't know record-wise what it means, and we really don't know what it means for the teams we don't know what we're going to see from Buffalo and Cincinnati when they get on the field. There's still 3 choices, and I'm going to have you go first, Jay, because Anthony's new pick leads to mine. So what game are you looking for in week
A game that, nobody would have pegged at the start of the season, and that's Jacksonville versus Tennessee with the AFC South title on the line. You talk about two teams going in the opposite directions we would have pegged them to be going in at this point in this season. It's almost as if they switched bodies. The Jaguars have won 4 straight and 6 of their last 8 to go from 2-6 to 8-8 and first place in the division, while the Titans have lost 6 straight to go from 7-3 to 7-9 and needing to beat Jacksonville in week 18 to win the division for the 3rd straight season. Now, it's not as simple as this, but if I had to boil it down to a single key that I'll be watching and that each team can point to as to why each of them is in their current situation, it's quarterback play. Jacksonville has been getting it big time from Trevor Lawrence during their last 8 games, while the Titans haven't really been getting it much since Ryan Tannehill went out for the year with an ankle injury in the Titans' Week 15 loss to the Chargers. Granted, it's not like Tannehill was having a Pro Bowl year like he did in 2019 before the injury, but the precipitous drop in quarterback play once the Titans had to pivot to rookie Malik Willis and then street free agent Josh Dobbs has been noticeable and glaring. In the Jags 6-2 stretch that catapulted him into first place, Lawrence has played at a Pro Bowl level, 70.6% completion percentage, 257.6 passing yards per game, 7.5 yards per attempt, 14 touchdowns versus only 2 interceptions, and a 106 passer rating. That's tier 1 level quarterback play, guys. And Lawrence has actually needed to play at that level because the Jags running game has been inconsistent at best during this run. Travis Etienne, Lawrence's former backfield mate at Clemson, who has eclipsed 1,000 yards rushing for the year, has had 3 games of 100+ yards and 3 games of less than 55 in this 8-game stretch. That's a little too much feast or famine, but it may be enough to get the Jags the win on Sunday if Lawrence continues to play at this level. Willis, in his 3 starts this season, is 1-2 with a 51% completion percentage, 4.8 yards per attempt, no TDs, 3 picks, 10 sacks, and a 39 passer rating. Look, we all knew that Willis was a project, but this pretty much proves it, which explains why the Titans went out and plucked former Steelers backup quarterback Josh Dobbs off the street and put him under center. Dobbs didn't put up much better numbers in his debut for the Titans, going 20 of 39. It's 51.3% completion for 232 yards, only 5.9 per attempt, 1 score, 1 pick, and a 67.5 passer rating. Granted, he didn't have much time to get up to speed on the entire playbook, but there's a reason that Dobbs never really got beyond QB3 for Pittsburgh. That said, he's a better option than Willis for this must-win game. Look, is it entirely possible that Derrick Henry will have an absolute monster game and literally carry the Titans on his back to victory? Sure. He's averaged 105.3 yards rushing per game, 5.5 yards per carry, and better than 1 touchdown per game in his career against the Jags, including 2 of his 6 career games of over 200 yards rushing and at least 2 touchdowns. But I have a feeling that this game will come down to quarterback play, and the Jags have a decided edge at the game's most important position. I like the Jags.
I'm gonna say something, and it's gonna sound very contradictory. Never count the Titans. Yes. Well, shut up. Number one, never count the Titans out because of how they're coached and how they play, and because the Jags are a very confident bunch, and they were in the beginning of the season when they started the season 2-0, and they also won in Los Angeles. I actually started season 3-1. I'm not 100%. I think it was 3-1. And then they kind of got the doors handed to them. So that's one thing. But then the other thing is, and I'll curse for the first time tonight, what the fuck are the Titans doing? Like, you have such an older quarterback in Ryan Tannehill who is prone to injury. You draft Malik Willis. You know he's not ready for anything. You end up having to start him for 3 games. And honestly, going to Dobbs is probably the best chance for them to win because, again, if Skylar Thompson, Zach Wilson, and Malik Willis all came into a room and had a quarterback contest, I would leave immediately because that would be the worst thing to ever put in front of in any sort of competition in the history of mankind. There is so much bad quarterback play in the NFL this year. It almost makes me appreciate what the hell Brock Purdy is doing in San Francisco.
Irrelevant. How crazy is that?
it makes me appreciate because the crap that we saw that got drafted ahead of him, and the fact that he is just doing exactly what he did at Iowa State and possibly better. It's insanity. All right, Anthony. What are you looking for in week 18?
Well, I am looking at one of the 4 o'clock games. It's the Rams and the Seahawks. Now obviously for the Rams, they're limping to the finish line. I mean, pretty much they've had a season where their roster was depleted with just devastated with injuries along the offensive line.
Talk about a lost season.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford, Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp. Just up and down the line, just guys on IR. They're the first defending Super Bowl team to have double-digit losses a year after winning the Super Bowl. So, historic season for all the wrong reasons. And Sean McVay just can't wait to get to the offseason. They've had their good moments. Cam Akers, went for 100 yards, back-to-back 100-yard games. Going into week 18, they're down to Baker Mayfield, signed them literally off the street, and
Cheer quarterback, by the way, and he's probably played his way to another team next year.
And obviously those night game against the Raiders provided one of the few highlights of the season for the defending champs. So they're looking to get just kind of get to the finish line at some point, just get this season over with. For the Seahawks, it's a different situation. They win, and Rabbi talk about this his game, and a Green Bay loss later on Sunday evening gets the Seahawks into that 7th and final playoff spot. Now, here's the thing with the Seahawks is that they really shouldn't be in this situation. They were 6-3 at one point, and before they lost 5 of the last 7 games. The 2 wins came against the Rams, and as you just talked about, the Jets. So they beat up on 2 teams that have had quarterback issues, and the other 5 games, including overtime game against the Raiders that they inexplicably lost in overtime. But Geno Smith is playing phenomenally well. Obviously goes to the Pro Bowl, and I was a skeptic for most of the season, but I have to give the man his flowers. He has been phenomenal, especially compared to the guy he replaced in Seattle. He's just been he has played very well. He's been a great story. I'm happy for him. Kudos to Geno Smith. The turnovers kind of went up a little bit. Obviously, he has 9 interceptions, 4 of them in the last month. So he started to get a little careless with the football. But he's done for him. He's just done an amazing job. Kenneth Walker III is closing on 1,000 yards. He's provided them a steady running game. We talked about him being one of our Baby New Year nominees in our year-end show, and obviously DJ Metcalf over 1,000 yards. So the offense averages 24 points a game. The way the Rams have been struggling, particularly offensively with all the injuries, you would think Seattle would be able to turn this game into a rout, especially being at home. But they barely beat the Rams the first time a month and a half ago and had to hold on for a 4-point victory. So the Rams, obviously, they would love to play spoiler. I do see Seattle winning this game, and they got the short end of the schedule. I mean, they have to literally sit around and wait for Green Bay to win to play a Detroit Lions team that they may even knock out in the playoffs, because obviously if Seattle wins, that means Detroit is out. I mean, I'm not trying to take away from your angle.
Let's talk about that right now, quick, before you just get over the rest of my angle. By the way, the Seahawks running defense has been one of the reasons why they're in this position now, and watch for Cam Akers to possibly have a big game on Sunday. Okay, so game 271 in the NFL season, which may or may not be the last regular season game, is the Lions and Packers. And then remember, the Lions used to never win in Green Bay or never beat Green Bay, but it's a different team. I mean, they did blow a big chance to control their own destiny here against Carolina 2 weeks ago, but they went back and destroyed Chicago this past week. Everybody had big games. Well, especially the running game. DeAndre Swift had a big game. So who does Detroit see? And Detroit, unfortunately for them, you said Seattle's in a bad situation. Detroit may be eliminated before they play this last game in a game that Green Bay can win and get in the playoffs, and by rolling off 5 straight to end the season. And it's what's shocking about this whole thing is Aaron Rodgers has had a worse QBR rating in this 5-game winning streak than Desmond Ridder, who has been a meh quarterback at best playing for Atlanta over the last few weeks. But what this team has done is their offensive line has now gotten back pretty much fully healthy. David Bakhtiari is back and better than ever. And it's allowed Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon to basically carry this team. They are the known quantities of this team. They are the veterans of this team, and their running games have been excellent over this past few weeks. Their defense has been Johnny on the spot, as seen in that fourth quarter against the Miami Dolphins a couple of weeks ago on Christmas Day. They just haven't given up. And we were laughing at Aaron Rodgers a month ago. It's like, 4-8, you're going to make the playoffs. And now they can make the playoffs and do it against the Detroit team that even if they do get eliminated, and I think there's a possibility this could be winning for both, but even if they do get eliminated, do you think Dan Campbell is going to care at all about that? No. Dan Campbell is going to have his team bite some kneecaps and make sure that they become the biggest Seattle fans known to mankind and get themselves in a situation where they can go 9-8. Detroit has had bad season after bad season after bad season over the last 4 or 5 seasons. And this is the time to see what has been a very dynamic offense this year, a defense that's improving. Aiden Hutchinson knows how to do everything for that team in the backfield. A defensive rookie of the year nominee for sure. But this could be really fun. Detroit's not as good of a road team as they are a home team. I do give you that. But this will show how far both teams have come. Detroit just this season and Green Bay in the last month of the season. Can you imagine a possible Green Bay San Francisco first round matchup? If you're San Francisco, that's the last.
That would be a rematch from last year's playoff. So some revenge issues there. If
that's right. That's right. Oh my God. And Aaron Rodgers in a underdog role against San Francisco. Very interesting. All right, guys. So before we go tonight, I want to revisit the story that we've been talking about this whole week and the Damar Hamlin horrific hit on Monday. Jay kind of started it up before. There's a lot of different angles of this that we want to talk about, at least in a football standpoint. And so I want to go quickly around the room here and kind of get your thoughts on a lot of this stuff. So number one, what do you guys think the NFL is going to do with this game specifically? I think a lot of people we're pretty much assuming week 18 is going to go as scheduled, and the NFL has basically said as such. So that's going to happen. The game is not going to be resumed this week. Playoff implications are on the line for both teams in this game. And they were on Monday. They still are now. So, Anthony, I'll start with you on this one. What do you think the NFL should do in this situation when it comes to standings?
It's tricky. And we were just actually talking about this before we went on the air. You understand this doesn't just affect this situation doesn't just affect the Bills and the Bengals, but also the Chiefs and the Ravens, respectively. Because in the Bengals case, this is a division title at stake. And in Buffalo's case, it's a 1 seed and a first round bye that's at stake. And obviously Kansas City being in a situation when they win and they get the 1 spot Saturday afternoon. Because of the scheduling, I would think that the best thing that they could do was just rule this game a no contest, because it was 7-3 in the first quarter when everything just kind of just completely stopped.
Until yeah,
And
that.
yeah, and it was too in the game. People watching them so said that there was no way to even determine who if the Bengals was going to win that game. You know, they were up 7-3 on Buffalo when they came back. A tie would basically work as a win for both teams. I mean, we just talked about the Giants getting to the playoffs. You don't think that tie had a lot to do with them being able to control their own destiny? With two games to spare. Um, and even last season with the Pittsburgh Steelers, that a tie that they got early in the season actually helped get them into the final playoff spot on the last week of the season. So I would think that the best thing would just be a no contest and just determine the seedings based on win percentage because I think I can't remember, but I think it was maybe 19. Oh, geez, I can't remember the year. Well, there was a case of Philadelphia playing one less game due to a game being snowed. I gotta look up the. I have to look
I
up
don't
the.
remember. I'll look it up for you. But
I have to look it
one
up.
thing I do want to say though, Anthony, is the Bills would actually be hurt. It would basically be a loss for the Bills because that would negate the tiebreaker that they would have with the Chiefs because they beat them in week 6.
Yeah.
So that is something that needs to be brought in. Jay, just a quickly, what do you think the NFL should do, and what do you think the NFL will do?
Here's what I'm hearing. Because the NFL is still unsure whether or not it is going to resume this game. And that's the latest out of the Park Avenue office today. Definitively the game will not be resumed this week, but otherwise everything is being considered according to NFL Executive VP of Football Operations Troy Vincent. He said the preliminary discussions on the scenarios of how to handle the game have only just begun and will continue in the coming hours and days. He declined to rule out anything, whether it involves resuming the game next week following the completion of the regular season this weekend and delaying the start of the playoffs, eliminating the pre-Super Bowl bye week to give extra time to fit in this game, or eliminating the game altogether. There's nothing off the table. So honestly, I think you kind of wait to see how this weekend plays out. If chalk holds, and concluding that game could have an impact on all the playoff implications that are there, then I think you maybe try and figure out a way to resume it. I think that by the time you get to that point where you would be essentially resuming it 2 weeks after everything happened, I think the players would be in a better headspace, especially since they're playing, both teams are playing this Sunday. Both teams had practices and or walkthroughs today in preparation for Sunday. So they're slowly getting back to the business of football. So I don't think they would be opposed to resuming the game. To me, at this point, I think it's just a scheduling issue. At this point, I look, in a perfect world, I'd like to see them, resume the game and play it out and have it happen. But in terms of, do you Anthony's, scenario of, eliminating the game altogether and just going off winning percentage, that's kind of a COVID era thing. And so there is some precedent for it. I don't know. Like I said, in a perfect world, I'd like to see them resume the game. I like seeing, resolutions on the field. But, at this point, I think it's more a matter of scheduling and logistics than it is, a headspace thing for the players, especially if, they're going to play and they, by everything I'm hearing and reading, they're going ahead with their game. Both of them are going ahead with their games this coming Sunday.
Vehemently disagree on the headspace thing, because it's one thing to get back on the field, it's another thing to get back to
I'm not saying they're in a prime headspace. I'm not saying
no,
there's.
I think
look, Rabbi, look, are they in the perfect headspace to essentially pick up?
No, I understand they're not.
But the thing is that at the end of the day, if they're not, if both teams are in agreement about playing this Sunday, then I don't see why they wouldn't be in agreement of, resuming their game if there was an option to do so. That's all I'm saying.
If there was an option to do so, what I really think should happen is I do think this should be a no contest, and consult with the Bills, who would be obviously consult with both teams, and most importantly, consult with the Bills, who would be hurt by this, and the Ravens, who would be hurt by this. And honestly, who says no in this situation? Because you really do have to think about what happened again as a human interest thing and not as an NFL thing. I know we're talking NFL now because we are a little over 48 hours since this happened, but there's still a lot on the table. But
there is. And honestly, Rabbi, the only way I see this game not being played altogether is if Damar Hamlin's medical situation changes in the ultimate worst way. If he, he's improving they've taken him down from 100% oxygen to 50% oxygen. That means he's closer to breathing on his own. You hope that trend goes upward. And honestly, I am hoping and praying that this kid comes out of it and he, is upgraded to stable by this weekend, because I tell you, nothing will lift the spirits and put both teams in a better headspace than that type of news. And I think, the entire country is hoping and praying for that kind of news. I mean, hell, even the president reached out to Hamlin's family. So, to say it goes from, the smallest child to the leader of the free world in terms of everybody, watching and praying. I really hope for that to happen, because I think that'll lift the spirits of everybody.
All right. One more thing about this, and then I want to get out. Give me any media aspect of this, whether it be good, whether it be bad, whether their name's Skip Bayless.
Yeah, I'm going to start that. I'm going to start that conversation, and I'm going to let Anthony chime in, and you, because we all read Skip Bayless's tweet. In his initial tweet, and in his reaction to what happened, and to say that it was utter dumbassery at work, and unfortunately very on brand for Bayless is bad enough. But the fact that he never actually apologized, the words "I'm sorry" never appeared as he in any social media posts, as he attempted to walk it back. I found it very interesting that Shannon Sharp did not show up for their national TV show on Tuesday, citing a personal issue. And it makes me wonder if the issue was his partner's utter dumbassery in his response to, oh my God, this is going to affect playoffs. Really, man? I mean, seriously, that's where your head goes when a 24-year-old kid is lying unconscious in the middle of a football field. That's where your first thought is? Really? I mean, guys, I know none of us here are really Skip Bayless fans, but, if you didn't want to, if anybody deserves to be the latest victim of, the burgeoning cancel culture in our society, Skip Bayless is next up on the list.
Let me tell you, though, he did come back today. He tried to have a soliloquy, or not a soliloquy, but talked about why he wasn't on the show yesterday, because people were
Shannon Sharp,
inferring on it. Yeah, Shannon Sharp. And Skip immediately talked about the tweet. Skip tried to defend himself again because he hasn't walked it back. He just said it was misunderstood. And Shannon got irate, basically. So if it's a stunt, fuck you all. But if it's not, that's a partnership that could be over. All right, Anthony, take us home.
You know what? No, that's not a start. Look, I've been a big fan of Shannon Sharp, but obviously I grew up watching his brother Sterling. I never. I've interacted with Shannon on social media a few times, and that to call that a stunt, I don't think so. I think Shannon is a person who stands on a lot of things.
And by the way, he mentioned that during his little talk, during his little speech this morning about how he kind of looked back into what his brother went through when he
Yeah.
was on the field paralyzed in '92.
Yeah. As far as, and you mentioned ESPN. You know, I know we've all criticized ESPN for a number of reasons over the years, but they handled the situation as with sensitivity, with humility as you possibly could. Ryan Clark, I don't know what else I can say, and I remember obviously he had issues with issues with his lungs, and he could not play. And you know this, obviously, being a Steelers fan, Jay. When the Steelers went to play the Broncos in the playoff game, he could not
Couldn't
play
go because of the altitude.
because the altitude being really bad for his lungs. And he talked about Mike Tomlin basically kicking out everybody in the room, all these doctors he brought in to try and clear him to play, and he just told everybody get out. And obviously he thought of the person, not the football player at that
Right.
moment. From some of the morning shows, not dealing with skid mailings, obviously, ESPN, NFL Network, they have handled this whole ordeal with sensitivity, just out of respect, not just to Damar Hamlin himself, but his family, his teammates, the entire Buffalo community, and it was great seeing fans cheering both teams walking off the field Monday night. And we've heard there's been so many days with fans unruly behavior, and in this moment, to see everyone come together for a 24-year-old, we're now learning about the person who Damar Hamlin was, and obviously, you know, the toy drive that he has started up, and the donations that are poured in. It was over 5 million. The last
It's at
I
six.
checked.
It's at six now.
Right? Correct.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, I think one of the things I did myself a favor. I stayed on social media, and that was because there were going to be individuals out there who was going to use this to kind of push their own personal beliefs, their own agendas, and I actually got into it. I actually privately wrote one famous person who trying to make it about something else, and I just kindly asked her. There's a lot of things you can criticize the National Football League over, but this is not the time to do it.
No, it's not the
And this is
place.
it's not the place or the time, out of
No.
respect for a young man who we are all hoping pulls through. And you will, at the end of the day, this is a human being. That's what we all have to remember. There's plenty of chances to call the NFL out, ESPN, any personal gripe you have about a TV personality, plenty of time to do it. Now, the attention should be on this young man. The attention should be on hoping he recovers, and hopefully the improvement continues. Hoping that next season we get to see him walk back onto the field. Maybe not as a football player,
Right.
but just being able to walk,
Right.
or to be able to walk into a stadium and knowing that his life is going on.
Right, which is what I meant, and
No.
when I said, we
Yeah.
just want him to be able to recover to the point where he can resume life, just
Yeah.
basic life.
Yeah, and that's how I like trying to reach out to people. It's like, and I do commend the NFL for sending counseling to all 32 teams. For people to talk about it, because we have been a big thing of mental health. And I can speak from my own health experience and the support that I received. And remember, the first show I came back, I was happy to see everybody at MMA. I was as chatty as it gets, because you realize how it could all end in a second, and you never know, and you can't take advantage of these of situations like this. And I would just tell anybody who's watching to continue keeping him in the prayers.
Yes.
Keep your fingers crossed. He can pull through. But the energy that you're using to go after, attack someone, use that energy to call somebody, call a family member, a friend. Let them know you're there for them. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them, just tell, even a simple "have a good day." With those words could go a long way to somebody who could be having just a miserable experience.
Yeah.
You never know what's going on, but we talked about how we needed to be more kinder to one another, and to see that playing out, I think was probably the biggest thing I took away from just a horrific situation Monday night.
Yeah. We in the past, we've given, Bills Mafia a lot of credit as one of the, not only one of the most passionate fan bases, in rooting for their team, but, in their, they're recognizing that not only their own players, but opposing players are human beings. I mean, we've talked about their contributions to other teams, players, charities, over the years. So to kind of see a similar output of humanity and of emotion and of, togetherness from the Bengals fan base that night, was really heartwarming to see, and I echo, Anthony's comments 100%. It's why I never pass up an opportunity to tell the people I love that I love them, because as Anthony said, you never know when it's going to be the last time you'll be able to do that. So, yeah, I mean, Rabbi, I don't know that you were prophetic when you closed out our year-end show talking about wanting to see a lot more kindness, in the media, in the real world, on social media and everywhere. But, you hate to kind of see this be the reason for it. But, I call it the silver lining in the cloud, any reason for people to be, kinder to each other and recognizing that, we're all human beings and we all deserve simple human decency and common courtesy. If this is what it takes to get more of that out into the world, then, that's the silver lining for me from this.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing I do want to mention in the toy drive is, that's the power. That's the true power I wish that social media always had. $2,500 goal, only $3,000 raised before Monday, $6 million now, and it really shows that word gets out quickly, and that's something that I think social media has always, that should have been the main purpose of social media. Should be.
Amen.
All right. We will be back soon with another edition of On the Sports Lines. The socials, facebook.com/onthesportslines to see us live on demand as soon as tomorrow, on youtube.com/onthesportslines, at ONTH Sportslines for any link that Jay wants to plug in terms of articles, and of course, obviously, you'll see the link to this show.
And links to this show.
Yes, we'll see you guys next time. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.